Is there life on Interstellar Object 3I Atlas? And even if it's just microbes, or is there more? Because the new discoveries with the new data that are coming in right now, they raise that question and they raise it big time. So stay tuned. So 3I Atlas is shedding something. It's shedding dust and it is shedding organics. Does it want to seed planets with that? That's the question. Could any of that dust be carrying living microbes? I'm not saying like, do aliens exist, or is this a spaceship? That's something different, right? That's a question that is also still in the room, because none of these anomalies, and we're counting 20 or even more right now, and more are coming the more data we're getting. It's not that we can cross anything off our list. This is even the more strange thing. So could this thing be a literal interstellar dandelion tossing biological seeds through space? This is the question that Harvard professor Avi Loeb has raised, because according to Avi Loeb, the data we got from space telescopes basically forces the most uncomfortable question you can ask. If we can imagine using an interstellar object to spread life, why assume nobody else already did it, right? If we can think about this, somebody else could think about it. Load it up with something, right? And I want to mention something first. I want to quote Avi Loeb, what he just said, and then we dissect it and I explain it step by step. So listen to this, because in my last video, we were talking about the strange methane anomaly of 3I Atlas that we have now detected. So what we need to know is the latest data from the Sphere X Space Observatory includes the detection of organic molecules, several organic molecules, with a production rate that is 14% of water molecules. And that is kind of strange. And I quote Avi Loeb here now. The most notable finding from the latest Sphere X and Webb data is the robust spectroscopic detection of methane, CH4 production. Methane was only detected after the passage of 3I Atlas near the Sun, perihelion. Its delayed production raises interesting questions because methane ice is hyper volatile with a significantly lower sublimation temperature than carbon dioxide, CO2. This implies that methane ice near the surface of 3I Atlas would have been vigorously sublimating at the time of the first reports of outgassing from 3I Atlas, when it was before perihelion. But, and this is the interesting part, he says, neither the Webb spectroscopy nor the Sphere X spectrophotometry from August 2025 detected methane. It wasn't there. It just was not there. So Avi Loeb says this suggests that methane is depleted in the outermost layers of 3I Atlas, and it was exposed to warming by the sunlight when it came closest to the sun, right? Or only closest to the sun, as he says. Within this scenario, he says the early detection of carbon monoxide, CO, outgassing on 3I Atlas is surprising, as carbon monoxide is more volatile than methane and should therefore be depleted from the surface. Yet it was detected prior to the methane detection. So that's why he said, could it be that the detected methane is produced by life forms? And then he says, these facts lead me to repeat my question once again. Does 3I Atlas carry any life forms? And it's an interesting thought experiment that he proposes. Basically, he says that humans just don't survive by just existing. We're building stuff. We're building monuments, pyramids, skyscrapers, symbols, stuff like that. But here's the twist. What if the longest lasting monument isn't actually a building? What if it's something else? What if the longest lasting monument is spreading life itself, so it keeps growing long after our sun dies? How could you do that? Put it on an interstellar object that travels outside our solar system. And again, if we can think about that, other life forms could probably as well. So Avi Loeb calls this idea essentially interstellar gardening. Makes sense, right? Spreading life into fertile territories among the stars. And he says something that sounds like sci-fi, but is actually a serious concept in astrobiology. So there is natural, it's called Panspermia. It's like life getting transferred by rocks, basically by accident. And there's directed Panspermia, life being spread on purpose by technology. So is 3I Atlas somewhat a Trojan horse? We raised that question before. And now we hit the uncomfortable question. Was most life in the universe seeded naturally or artificially? That's a good question, right? The quote, "For all we know, we might all be Martians," is interesting because Avi Loeb then uses a specific example to show why his idea isn't totally crazy. Early Mars and early Earth could have swapped rocks after big asteroid impacts. That could have been possible. Mars cooled earlier than Earth, so it may have been habitable earlier, right? We hear more and more about this, what they detect. So in principle, microbes could have hitchhiked from Mars to Earth, right? And he even points out the famous Martian meteorite, ALH 84001, that's the name of it, as an example rock that traveled without being cooked to extreme temperatures. And that means in theory, microbes could survive in a similar journey. And then, in my opinion, he drops the mic. He said, "For all we know, we might be Martians." Now, even if you hate that idea, it has one job in today's story. It primes you for the next leap, I can say. If rocks can move life between planets, why not between stars? Why not? And 3I Atlas could be the perfect seed pod for that. Let's get to that punchline. The opportunity is literally passing in front of our eyes right now. Interstellar visitor 3I Atlas. So the new telescope data, we know that the plume around 3I Atlas contains water, carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, and methane, substances that can be consumed by terrestrial life forms. Boof, there it is again. So Avi Loeb is proposing a crazy simple scenario, I have to say. So the moment when 3I Atlas was discovered on July 1st, 2025, imagine we had launched an interceptor spacecraft. That could have met 3I Atlas at its closest approach to Earth. That would have been December 19th, 2025, and it could smash into it, could deposit a capsule of life, basically seeding 3I Atlas. So the question is, well, we could do it. Maybe 3I Atlas is doing it also, right? That vice versa. What would be inside that seeding pod, that capsule that we would send there? Well, definitely some form of heating to keep the environment warm, probably radioactive heating, so microbes can survive, evolve, multiply, and become a stable colony inside the object, right? Then the object, 3I Atlas, travels through interstellar space. And when it reaches the neighborhood of another habitable planet, warming causes the surface to release dust particles like our sun did, right? If there's a sun, it warms. That's why he comes up with that comparison, like a dandelion scattering seeds. These seeds are going off and they're flying everywhere. So basically, that's the idea. And then he says something that is basically designed to punch you right into your brain. So he says, this could be cheaper than building a huge monument on Earth. And he compares it to the cost of the One World Trade Center, for example. So the sci-fi part here isn't the physics, it's the priorities. What is our priority? And now comes the line that is really also mind-boggling, because if we can imagine doing this, other civilization might have done it already. They might have done it already. And that leads to what he calls the central question, in which he repeats, are there life forms on the dust shed by 3I Atlas? Are there any life forms? And we're not in philosophy territory anymore, as you've just learned, right? We're in like data processing. We do have data. What is on there? So I think we have to look at two major sources of observations: the Webb telescope and the Sphere X. The Webb data indicates that the plume contains H2O, CO2, CO, and CH4. Then the Sphere X data detected organic molecules such as CH3OH, methanol, H2CO, formaldehyde, CH4, methane, and C2H6, ethane. And with a reported production rate of these organics at about 14% of water molecules. So hold on, guys. So far you might say, okay, whatever, right? Comets have organics. Yes, but there's one specific anomaly with 3I Atlas, and that is, now back to my quote that I mentioned earlier, the methane timing problem. So some ices on a comet are more eager to turn into gas than others. We know that. Methane ice is hyper volatile, so it should vaporize easily compared to CO2. So if methane is near the surface of 3I Atlas and the object is warming up as it approaches the sun, you would expect methane would show up early. But it did not. Methane was not detected in August 2025 in the data from the Webb and Sphere X telescopes. But then, all of a sudden, methane shows up only after 3I Atlas passed closest to the sun. And the interpretation of this is the following. Maybe the outer layers were depleted of methane. Maybe methane was buried deeper on 3I Atlas. And only when the sun heated it enough, then did methane gas get exposed and released. So far, this is still a natural explanation. But then another detail needs to be added that makes your eyebrows rise like that. And it made Avi Loeb's eyebrows rise. Carbon monoxide, CO, is even more volatile than methane. So CO should also get depleted from surface layers. Yet, CO outgassing was detected before methane. That's really, guys, that's the wait, what moment. They're like, what the F? This is that moment. So that's why the question arises, could the detected methane be produced by life forms? Is that an explanation? And important, nobody's saying right now, this proves there is life. This is really something that we have to understand and make clear. But, and especially what Avi Loeb is saying, methane can be a biosignature in some contexts. And the sequence of detections is weird enough to justify asking the question, right? And he seems to be one of the few scientists that are actually asking that question. Does 3I Atlas carry any life forms when we look at the physical data? real data. But let me be clear, because again, organic molecules does not equal life. You can make organic molecules without life. But the point that we should understand is a little bit more specific. If the dust particles are large, and we've looked at that, right? That they must be large in order to produce this massive antitail and the long one. So if the dust particles are large, and if microbes are inside of them or attached, you could, in principle, test that. And you should, if you could, right? How? You'd need direct sampling or like an insanely good spectroscopy that distinguishes biological production patterns from geology or chemistry. Right now, we do not have that proof, unfortunately. So if we want to draw an honest conclusion right now, today, we have evidence for water and organics and methane. We do not have evidence for organisms yet, maybe. So basically what we can take away from this rare visitor and its signals, why wouldn't we at least seriously investigate the life possibility? And Avi Lipp keeps repeating that, right? Let's have a look at this. We should be more curious. We should want more, not just cross it out and say it's a natural comet, nothing to see here. So here's the ending question I want you to sit with. If an interstellar visitor can act like a seed pod, and if we can imagine using it to spread life, then the scariest, most mind-boggling possibility isn't like aliens visiting, it's this. Life might be moving around the galaxy already, and we're just not noticing the delivery truck because so many of us don't listen or don't look careful enough, right? So I hope you found this interesting, guys. There's way more about this object. Go to my channel start page. I have a playlist with all the anomalies where everything is explained. Please like and hype this video and check out the videos in the end screen. A lot of interesting stuff. If you want to learn more about me and behind the scenes, support the channel with clicking the join button. Become a supportive member of the channel for behind the scenes videos that are only for the members. Thank you to every member who's doing this. Thank you so much for your support. And yeah, I hope to see you in the next one. Thank you. Bye-bye.